says, I ain't your armor bearer. I ain't your Rottweiler. I'm not your pit bull. I am a just God. And the same God that had to have mercy on you, you go also, oh my God, need him to have the same mercy.
We must not only learn from our mistakes, but also learn from the mistakes of those who hurt us. Now let's get into The Ministry in a Mistake, Part 5, Life After Their Mistake.
We have been in this series entitled, this teaching series entitled, The Ministry in a Mistake. The Ministry in a Mistake. We have been exploring this concept for several weeks now, and I've been blessed by it. I hope you have been too. Today is part 5 of that series. I thought we were going to be done with it the last time I preached, but the Lord keeps sending words. So we're not done until he says so. But Genesis chapter 50, verse 15 through 21. And it reads like this. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, it may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. So they sent a message to Joseph saying, your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin because they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father. Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, behold, we are your servants. But Joseph said to them, do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Verse 15 says, Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. In part 5 of this series, I want to talk about life after their mistake. Life after their mistake. All throughout this series entitled The Ministry in a Mistake, all throughout this series, we've discussed our mistakes. We've discussed what we have done and the trauma we have caused and the trouble we have caused. We have discussed the mistakes that we have made. We've discussed what we learned about ourselves in making these mistakes. And we've also discussed what we learned about others after we have made a mistake. We have grown. We have discovered how and in what ways we can grow after making a mistake. But there is just as much ministry in their mistake as there is in your mistake. We too often we find the ministry in our mistakes that we make against ourselves or other people. But there is so much ministry that we neglect when other people make a mistake against us. Truth be told, at some point in your life, somebody is going to make a mistake against you. It's time out for us walking around thinking that people will never fail us. People will not make mistakes against us. There's something wrong with anybody who thinks they can have a relationship of any kind and the person not upset you at some point, not do something, because the Bible says, for all have sinned. We run away from churches because people make mistakes, and we run away from friendships because people make mistakes. We refuse to enter into relationships because people make mistakes. And the sad reality is that we really don't understand the idea that we can't get past what people did to see what God wants us to understand. If you can get past mistakes and see ministry in it, there's some things, if you look back on your life right now, there's a lot of things that your mistakes taught you, but there's a lot of things that other people's mistakes taught you. Grandmama would put it like this: ain't nothing better than a bought lesson. A lesson that you had to pay for, a lesson that you had to earn at the expense of someone's mistake. And the truth be told, we need just as much help recovering from what other people have done to us as we do to what we have done to ourselves. And what I hope for us to learn today is the importance of being on the right side of wrong. What I mean by that is how we handle what happens when we've been wronged, when we have been offended, when we have been transgressed against. You still have to operate on the right side of even the wrong action. If we expect God to hold others accountable for what they have done to us, then we certainly can expect God to hold us accountable for how we respond to what they've done to us. Preach, Pastor Jay. I'm trying as hard as I can. I'm going to say that one more time for the people online. If we expect God to hold others accountable for what they have done to us, then we certainly can expect God to hold us accountable for how we respond to what others have done to us. I want you to understand that God don't just hold them accountable for what they did, but he also holds you accountable for how you reacted. Oh, y'all ain't gonna like me today. See, y'all want this go get them Pastor J ministry. You want this, you want God to go get them. We can't, it's time out for us to stop. It's time out for us treating God like he's our Rottweiler that go get the folk that go get us. We downgrade God from being the divine God to being some sick'em God. And God says, I ain't your armor bearer. I ain't your Rottweiler, I'm not your pit bull. I am a just God. And the same God that had to have mercy on you, you go also, oh my God, need him to have the same mercy. See, we've got our moral math wrong. Our moral math says wrong plus wrong equals wrong. That's just moral math. It's common sense. See, two wrongs, that's what grown folks say, two wrongs don't make a right. Two wrongs don't make a right. Wrong plus wrong equals wrong. And you wondering why things ain't getting better. That's because you responded to what they did wrong with what you did wrong. And then you wondering why everything gone wrong. Preach, Pastor Jay. I'm trying to help somebody up in here. If somebody does something wrong and you do something right, then we got a better chance of it turning out right. Can't say amen, just say amen. But Pastor, all that sounds good. Some of y'all gonna check out on me right now because this ain't for me, because I ain't, because we say that, God ain't through with me yet. He know my heart. Pastor, I'm just gonna be honest, I ain't there yet. And I understand, because how do you heal when it still hurts? How do you forgive when you can't forget? How do you respect who they are when you still remember what they did? How are you supposed to heal when you must serve with and work with and even live with the one who hurt you the most? can I tell you that if you don't heal from what hurt you, you will bleed on people who didn't cut you. How do I live life after their mistake? How do I live after they have failed me? How do I live after they have transgressed against me? How do I live when they have lied on me? How do I live when they betrayed me? How do I live when they stole from me? How do I live when they disrespected me? How anybody can live amongst people who make them happy and who they're compatible with and they are comrades with, but how do I operate when my enemy came from within my bloodline? How? Oh my God, I wish I had somebody be honest with me up in here. How do I heal from the pain caused by the one that vowed in sickness and in health? How do I heal when the very person that I church with also hurt me? Pastor, how do I live life after their mistake? In our text for today, the book of Genesis comes to a close with a lesson that opens our heart to a new way to heal. The hero in this passage is Joseph, who teaches us how to live with hurt as he prepares to die free from his. In his story is a classic example of how God uses haters as elevators. I'm going to say that again. I said in this story is a classic example of how God uses haters as elevators. For those of you who are of seasoned sainthood and you don't know what a hater is, I'll tell you, a hater is someone who they're what I call secret admirers. They in public they criticize what you do, but in private it's because they want to do what you do. And because they can't do what you do, be what you are, get what you get, then they criticize everything you have. But I want somebody to understand, listen, if you want what I have, you must pay what I paid. Preach, Pastor Jay. I'm trying as hard as I can. So to understand chapter 50, you must know chapter 37. Because you cannot understand Joseph's resolve in chapter 50 without first understanding his pain in chapter 37. And in chapter 37, we'll find the story of Joseph and his brothers. At the time, Joseph is 17 years old, and he's one of 12 sons of Jacob. Now, you will oftentimes hear Jacob referred to as Israel in the Bible. That's because when God called Jacob, he changed his name to Israel. It is not uncommon for God to do so, because when God calls a person, he changes the name that they have to match the nature he called of them. And I want to say that one more time for the people that don't get it. I know what your name is, but God says, I'm changing your name to match your new nature. Because your name used to be, I can't say all y'all names because some of y'all names ain't fit for the pulpit, but isn't it amazing how God would change your name? They used to call you this, but now they've got to call you that. That's why we got to be glad that we ain't what we used to be. May not be what we ought to be, but we ought to be glad we ain't what we used to be. I ain't always been reverend and pastor and preacher. You ain't always been deacon and sister and minister and so. But thanks be to God that he changed your name. He changed his name to Israel. So if you hear the word Jacob or Israel, they are interchangeable. They're the same person representing two different personalities, two different periods in Jacob's life. And now watch this. Now, although Joseph was one of 12 sons of Jacob, you must understand that not all of these 12 boys had the same mama. He and the baby boy Benjamin share the same mother and father. But Joseph, Jacob was in a time where it was permissible to have more than one wife. and concubines. And now I need you to understand that's not legal now, so brothers don't get no ideas. But let me also be clear and say this. I don't know why anybody in their right mind would want to have more than one wife, because dealing with one of y'all women is, ooh, I'm about to have me a men's revival right now. I mean dealing with just dealing with one of them. Just dealing with one of them. I don't understand why anybody want to have three of them. Just dealing with one of them is a headache enough. Somebody looking at me now, I'm gonna have a hard time dealing with the one I got. And Jacob had 5, 6 of them. Anyway, where was I at? That's what I get for being messy. My member told me, Pastor, be on your best behavior. Now I'm bringing a guest to church. Ooh, Jesus. Joseph's father Jacob loved him more because he was born in his old age. You'll find that in verse 2 through 3 in chapter 37. His father Jacob made him a robe of many colors. The text says that his father loved him more than he loved the rest of them. That's tripped out, because first of all, when you got kids, you're supposed to love them equally. But those of you who got parents, you ever felt like your parents love one more than the other? Ooh, some of y'all looking at me right there talking about, yes, Pastor, yes. And don't look at them, but just think, who you think the favorite really is? Now some of you who are fussing because you judging your mama, but you too have also been that parent where your kids think one of them is the favorite. So now, so we're taught as parents that we're supposed to love our kids equally and differently. I hate mine equally too. I do. I love them equally and I hate them equally. I do. And but the text says that Jacob loved his son Joseph more than he loved the rest of them. And that I don't know. And listen, you got to understand, the book of Genesis is not written by Joseph. It's not written by Jacob. So what we have is a third-party information. As a matter of fact, the author of the book of Genesis is Moses. So we must understand that what we have is a third-party account. Now, so what I'm saying to you is that although that's what the Bible said, we don't know for certain that that's actually true, that that's the way Jacob felt, because this is Moses' writings about their story. Now, you must understand, we don't really know. We may think we know, but the point of the matter is the text says that he loved him more. He even made him a robe. A robe was an immediate sign of royalty. This would offend his brothers because, wait a minute, we got several brothers before you. And usually royalty came to the firstborn son. And so I kind of understand why you would feel some type of way, because while the other brothers would feel some type of way, because wait a minute, I'm the oldest, but you love this one the most. But I'm the one that's taking care of you. I'm the one that's, I'm trying to be careful, but I'm the one that's going to bat for you. I'm the one paying bills. I'm the one that's going all over the place, but the one you care about the most is the one who does the least. His father Jacob made him a robe of many colors. Joseph, he gets his robe, goes to bed. Joseph has two dreams. He has two dreams about God's call on his life and how he would be a ruler, perhaps even over his siblings and even his parents. And this was offensive to those brothers that he had. Now, his brothers, because of these two dreams that he had about being a ruler over everything and everybody, his brothers begin to hate him even more because of God's favor and his dad's love. Verse 4 even says they couldn't speak peacefully to him, ever. If you have an issue with my blessing, then you might need to take it up with my blessor. See, they hated Joseph because of his dad's love. But the dream shows that they also hated Joseph because of the favor God had on his life. So they stripped Joseph of his coat. They cast him into an empty pit and left him for dead. They found a pit. And when I say a pit, I ain't talking about a hole in the ground. I'm talking about a pit that you have to look up to see out. You would have to crawl out of the pit. The Bible is not clear on how deep this pit was. What we do know is that it was deep enough to stand 3 or 4 men on top of each other's shoulders, and you would still be able to fit them perfectly fine. They put Joseph in a pit. They took his robe off. That means they took off his royalty. They took off of his title. They called themselves stripping him of everything that make him great, and then put him in a pit to die. Watch this. They buried him, but they did not realize that he's a seed. Oh my God, what they thought they were doing, they thought they were burying him, but God used what they did to plant him. And you do know that both things go in the ground, but there's a big difference between being buried and being planted. Preach, Pastor Jay. I want you to understand, sometimes you are in a pit because you've been planted. And so they stripped Joseph of his coat, cast him in this pit, and left him to die. Then they sat down at the pit and had lunch. I said, why would they do that? Well, because they needed to wait for him to die. They needed to make sure he died. And then as they were sitting there having lunch, they discovered, no, this probably ain't gonna work. We probably need to get him out this pit and figure something else out. So they get him out the pit and sell him into slavery. Now remember, they're his brothers. His brothers. They are jealous of him, they hate him, and they have stripped him and buried him, and then get him out and sell him to slavery. Have you ever felt like your brother sold you out? And then on top of that, they sold him for 20 pieces of silver. They didn't sell to the highest bidder. They sold to the first bidder. All of these actions show you what they felt like he was worth. But it's funny because if the people that we would least expect to do him like that are his brothers. Have you ever been so hurt by people you least expected to? The people that's supposed to be behind you, the people that's supposed to be with you, they hurt him. And then they went home, and to cover it up, they lied to their daddy. Daddy, something happened to Joseph. What happened to him? All we got is his robe. What happened to him? A wild beast ate him up. Let me tell you, in my opinion, how dumb the daddy is. The robe is intact with no blood. So how did the animal hurt and eat up Joseph without affecting the robe? But he immediately, he ain't got time to be worried about what happened to the robe. He's distraught about what happened to his son. And so they cover this up and they mourn for years. And Joseph goes from the pit to the prison and spends 13 years in slavery. From age 17 to 30, he's in prison. But in prison, he was of all the things for him to be. In prison, because watch this, when you were in prison, in Bible days, they would find out what you were good at and you would repay your debt to society with what you were good at. Guess what Joseph's occupation was? He was a dream interpreter. Oh my God. The very thing that got him in trouble is now what's going to be used to get him out of trouble. He's a dream interpreter. And so now he interprets dreams for those who serve the king. So anytime a servant of the king has a dream that they need interpreted, they go to the prison and say, Joseph, can you tell me what this dream means? Joseph would interpret a dream, and he was so good at it that the servants of the king went back to the king and said, hey man, this guy's an interpreter of dreams. And they said, and the king says, oh, that's great, that's good news, that's good for y'all, until he had a dream that needed to be interpreted. So he calls upon who he's been recommended, Joseph. And Joseph interprets his dream, and now Joseph moves from the prison to the palace. Why? Because he's found favor with the king. He finds favor with the king by doing what got him excommunicated in the first place. Here's what I mean by that. He found, the dream is what got him in trouble, but the dream is also what got him in front of the king. So now, he's in front of the king. He's been elevated. They tell the king, and later the king pulls him in. He interprets a dream, and the king promotes him to a title called overseer. He goes from his father's house to a pit, to a prison and slavery, to the palace. But didn't God tell him about the dream? In the beginning, when he went to sleep, he told him, you're going to be a ruler. But he leaves from the dream going to the pit and then to a prison. I said, Lord, something don't add up. He says, I showed him the destination, but did not show him the devastation. I want somebody to get this. Oftentimes, God will show you the dream, but will not show you the path. Woo! Preach, Pastor Jay, I'll help myself up in here. Sometimes God will show you where you're going to end up, but you ain't going to see how you're going to get there. You don't know when you get the dream. You're going to have to go through hell and heartache and the pit and the prison. All you know, and I want to tell somebody here, don't give up on your dream. I know it's hard right now. I know it's hell right now. I know it hurts right now. But if you can maintain the pit, God will get you to the king. Take me to the king.
To keep up with Pastor Jay, follow him on social media. Visit Instagram or Facebook and search Micah D. Johnson Ministries. Thank you for your support.
He says, if you're going to be dealing with life after a mistake, there are three things you're going to learn. Number one, you're going to learn about them. Number two, you're going to learn about you. And lastly, you're going to learn about God. There are some things you're going to discover about them after their mistake. There are some things you're going to discover about you after their mistake. And there's some things you're going to discover about God after their mistake. Y'all got a few minutes. I got to get this to you so it can make sense to you. So look at chapter 49, verse 3 to verse 3. And some things that you're going to learn about them is in this verse. Them, who is them? In the text, it's the brothers of Joseph. Now, you must understand, after Joseph has been overseer to the king, he's been an overseer to the king for quite some time. And so when we get to 49, his dad has died. No, his dad is about to die. He's on his sick bed, his deathbed, and so he needs to meet with his brothers. But by this time, Joseph has been a king or overseer for quite some time. He don't look like the last time they saw him. God will make sure that the people that sold you out, the next time they see you, you'll be, is this Joseph? Didn't we take his robe? Now he got a whole nother robe on. Is this Joseph? And that's how God will do. He will make sure your haters see you eat. That's why he said, God will prepare a table before me in the presence. Oh my God, I hope this is helping somebody up in here. He'll show you, he says, look at chapter 49 and look at verse 1. Look at verse 1 actually. Look at verse 1. So I want you to see something in verse 1 and 2. It says, and Jacob called his sons and said, gather yourselves together. He said, all my boys, come here, that I may tell you what shall happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. I mean, I'll tell you about Israel and Jacob, same person. So he gathers all his boys together so he can tell them about themselves. He's going to expose everything about who they are. Jacob gathers all of his sons and explains who they really are. And I ain't going to deal with all of them, all 12 of them, but I'm going to show you some interesting things about a few of them. Look at verse 3 and 4. Look at let's start with the oldest one, the one that he's mad because he ain't the one with the robe. Let's start with why Jacob didn't choose him. The text says, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning to my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Now go to verse 4. Unstable as water. He says, you all these great things, but you unstable as water. Why is water unstable? Water moves at the slightest stage. He says, you've got all this strength, but you're unstable. Thou shalt not excel. You mean you won't be promoted? Why? Because you went up to your father's bed and defiled it. You went up to my couch. Let me make this make sense. I did all my research and I did my homework to find out. I said, okay, so he's mad because he's slept in his daddy's bed? No. He's mad because his son slept with one of his wives in his bed. Preach, Pastor Jay. I don't preach nothing but the Bible. So he's saying, how dare you call yourself mad about what I gave to Joseph and you sleeping with my wife? And you supposed to be my son. Isn't it a trip? How folks got the audacity to be offended when someone hurts them, but they forget about all the hurt they've caused other people. You're in the same family, mad at your brother, but the whole time you've been betraying all of our Father. Let me make that make sense to you. Too many of us are mad about people, and then you tripping out, finding out, and God is looking at you like, but what about everything you've done to me? And can I suggest this to you? That a lot of the problems you have with people are the same problems God have with you. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Next verse. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He touched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up. He gives Judah good praises. Okay? Now let's go down to verse 27. Let's get to Benjamin. Benjamin is the baby, the youngest of them. In verse 27, he says, Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. Here's what he means. Benjamin is greedy. He will do anything to get everything. I'm going to say that again. He will do anything to get everything. He's greedy. So I chose a few sons because I need you to understand that there was a mixed bag of brothers. Everybody in your family ain't the same. You got some good and some bad. And before you criticize my family about the good and bad in mine, there's some fools in yours too. You ever looked in your family and discovered they don't even fool with them. They crazy over there now. Fool them. Crazy. Silly. Throw it off. And so you keep your whole household. Anytime you find out something going on over their house, no, we're not going over there because I don't do all that. You can't do everything everywhere. See, so, and then you have to sit down and tell your kids, now listen, we got to go over here because we don't want no problems. But you have to prep your children when you take them over so-and-so house. Listen. Now, when you go, don't sit down on nothing because they nasty. Don't eat nothing. Just tell them you already ate. Now, don't get over here acting like you hungry. Now, look at how y'all looking at me. Look at how y'all looking at me. Because you know you don't eat nothing from over their house because they not clean. But you ain't going to tell them that they not clean because you don't want no problems because you know they silly when you tell them the truth. But they always talking about keep it real. Anyway, moving right along. So what they did, well, oftentimes, listen, what they did will oftentimes reveal who they have been the whole time. Jacob tells all of his sons about each other. Tell them, you this, you that, you this, and you that. He tells them all about themselves. I want you to understand something. When people make a mistake against you, what they did will tell you who they have been the whole time. You just didn't know. Oh. See, you may be surprised by what they did. It may have caught you off guard, but what you didn't know is that's who they've been the whole time. Oh. See, a wolf can put on sheep clothing, but he's still a wolf. But you think he's a sheep because he looked like a sheep, talk like a sheep, act like a sheep. And how do they do that? Because they study their opponents. Oh, they've been a liar the whole time. They've been a deceiver the whole time. The whole time it's always been about them. Stop being shocked when people mistreat you. That's who they are. That's who they've been the whole time. Oh, I'm setting somebody free up in here today. I don't know who it is. Somebody online watching. You surprised by everything they did. Listen, when people show you who they are, believe them. You wouldn't know who they are until they showed you who they are. They can, but watch this now before you get too hard, because, we got this checkout spirit. The moment somebody hurt us and get upset, we throw them away. But let me tell you something. The same blood God used to redeem you can also work to redeem them. No wonder the songwriter said it reaches to the highest mountain and it flows to the lowest valley. The blood can wash everybody's sins. You would not know them unless the Father, watch this, Joseph wouldn't have known all these things about his brothers until his father said it. Can I share something with you? There are some things you wouldn't know about people until God exposed them. See, God uses exposure to minister to you. It ain't about catching them, it's about teaching you. You can't trust everybody with everything. He's teaching you. See, sometimes we're so caught up in what they did that we miss what God is saying. So he says you can learn about them. He says look at verse 22 and 20. Look at verse 22. He says you can learn about you. Joseph is a fruitful bow of a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, harassed him severely. This is Joseph. Yet his bow remained unmoved. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Now, I want you to understand this. He says, this is his father talking about his son Joseph. He's talked about the other brothers, but he does not leave Joseph out, who's the hero of our text. He says to Joseph, Joseph is a fruitful bow. A fruitful bow is a branch that bears fruit. He's one that gives birth to things. They are productive. They produce. This right off the bat explains why Joseph is the favorite one, because Joseph is going to produce. Parents like their kids to be productive, to produce things, to give birth to things, to bear fruit of things. And so he says, you are a fruitful bow by a spring. A spring is a water reservoir. Anytime you see water in the Bible, it is symbolic of the Word of God and the Spirit of God. So he says right off the bat, Joseph is fruitful because he's always close to the Word. He's always close to the Spirit. And that's the only way you can be fruitful, is if you remain in the Word and in the Spirit. And no wonder they call them the fruits of the Spirit. He says his branches run over the wall. Why is that important? That's why he's the favorite, because too many of us will give up the moment we hit a wall. Pastor, I just couldn't do it because this happened. But I couldn't do that because that happened. But God is looking for some people who can grow over the wall. He said the archers bitterly attacked him. The archers are those who operate well bow and arrows. They got good aim. But the funny thing about archers is they hunt in hiding. You don't see them, but they see you. And they have perfect aim. They know just where to hit you to hurt you. Jacob says to his son, archers bitterly attacked you. They attacked you, yet your bow remained unmoved. He says, Joseph, you're amazing because even though they were shooting bows at you, you never drew your bow. Your bow became unmoved. Here's what that means. Joseph is celebrated because of what he didn't do. He could have got him, but he didn't. Oh, that's a lesson. Because you ain't got to go off every time somebody, Sometimes learn to put your bow up. Because watch this. God has a way of getting vengeance way better than you do. His arms were made agile, still by the hands of the mighty one. God kept him. God, now, I can't give Joseph all the credit because God kept him by his side. God kept his bow by his side. God teaches him how to restrain himself. And that's a word for some of us because some of us would have been done and went off, but the Holy Ghost kept your tongue and said, you know what, be quiet, be quiet. And you like, you know what, Holy Ghost, I'm on, okay, because, you know, they finna get it. And but then what I like about it is the last part, he says, from there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Do you know what the stone of Israel is? That's Jesus. He says, from your loins, from your DNA, from your bloodline, the Savior is coming. That's why I've got to make you the favorite because there's a king in you. You're a favorite because of what's in you. And that's why folk can't count you out. It's because of what God put in you. I'm in Bible country. Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. Jacob heals his son from the trauma of his childhood by validating his servanthood. Have you healed from your childhood? Is that the reason why you still stubborn? Is that the reason why you still mean? Is that the reason why you still won't trust anybody? Is that the reason why you still hateful? Is that the reason why you are where you are because you got wounds as a kid? And you're a grown person and you still ain't healed. So what you're doing is you're walking around punishing people for the stuff they didn't do to you. You're hurting people because of the things that mama did to you. You can't even see a good man because you've experienced the bad ones in your life. You can't even appreciate what God sent because you're too afraid to take what God sent because the least pain that you've experienced is familiar. Some of us would rather deal with a familiar pain than deal with the freedom that they don't know nothing about. But God is looking for people with courage beyond the wall. God has a way of healing you from the trauma of your childhood if you just listen. You don't even know who you are. But isn't it funny how you don't know who you are until you've been hurt? You don't know who you are until somebody has ran you hot. You don't know who you are until somebody has made you angry. You don't know who you are. You don't know your own strength or your own growth until it is tested. Don't tell me how much you've grown until you show me how much you've been tested. Don't tell me how much you love me until you have to prove your love to me. Your love means nothing if you can't prove it. Love conquers all. Your growth means nothing until it has been tested, until it has been beat up, until it has been attacked. Anybody can say who they are, but we'll find out who you really are when you've been hurt. You ever met folk like that? You didn't know they would do a thing like that until they've been hurt. He says, you also don't know who you are until you have hurt somebody. Many of us walk around and say stuff like, I would never do a thing like that. Then you find yourself hurting people in ways you never thought you would. So the last thing is you learn about them, you learn about you, but I'm done. You learn about God. Chapter 50, verse 18 through 20. I'm done for real. Look at this, y'all. This is amazing. He says, and his brothers also came and fell down before him and said, behold, we are your servants. Wait a minute. In chapter 37, ain't these the same brothers that said they would never serve and bow down to their baby brother Joseph? But now, here we are in chapter 50, saying, they came and fell down before him and said, behold, we are your servants. God got a way of turning it around. But his brother but Joseph said to them, do not fear. And then he asked a question. What you mean, serve me? Am I in the place of God? He reminds them the only person you should serve is God. Oh, that's the level of maturity right there. Because too many of us couldn't resist the moment to say, yeah, you better serve me. Look at me now. Look at me now. But Joseph says, no, I can't do that because the God in me will not allow me to allow you to serve me. And as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. Verse 18 says, he made them to do what they said they would never do. Perhaps this story was never about promoting Joseph, but more about humbling his brothers. I didn't see this until recently when I studied it. For a long time, I thought this whole story was about Joseph's promotion. But I discovered this is really a lesson in humility for his brothers. Sometimes God will promote you to show them to be humble. God will promote the least expected one to show you ain't all that you thought you were. The brothers, the text says in verse 20 that Joseph says, you meant it for evil. The brothers meant it. But guess what? The text also, Joseph also says, but God meant it for good. And we talk about the good, but can I look at that word meant for a second? That word meant is intentional. Wait a minute. Are you saying, Pastor, that God intended for this to happen? Yeah. The text says, Joseph says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it. He meant it. It was designed. It was intentional. What you went through, God meant it. He intended it. He allowed it and he intended it. Why? Because you would not know he's a way maker until you've been there where there is no way. You would not know God is a healer until somebody hurts you. You would not know the peace of God until you've been thrown into the chaos of others. You wouldn't know how good God really is until you experience the evil of everybody else. Why did God do that? Lord, how could you allow them to handle me like this? God says, I did it just to get you to this place. God could easily just promote you without no process. But the process makes you respected, but it also makes them respected. God's power in you to keep you and change you. He wants you to understand that you're going to learn some stuff about God when they make a mistake against you. You're going to learn that God has power in you to keep you and to change you. God's power over you, you'll discover that. But you'll also discover God's power over them. You wouldn't know God to be a protector until you've been exposed to your enemy. The text says, this is the part that I'm going to try not to run all over this building, but he says, you meant it for evil against me, but God. That's it right there. Those two words rock the shaky foundations of all Christianity, but God. The wages of sin is death, but God. You were sick and the doctor did no good, but God. Shall I have somebody help me preach up in here and close this thing? You have been through hell, but God. Oh my God, y'all almost got a divorce, but God. And they lied on you, but God. You ever had a but God moment? I said, have you ever had a but God moment? You were broke, didn't have the money, but God. I like the function of that conjunction. Oh, because the word but means everything I said before is nowhere near as relevant as what I'm about to say. He says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for the good. So you don't worry about what you did. Why? Because now unto him who is able to present you faultless. It don't mean you innocent, but he can present you faultless. That's why we ought to be excited, because God has a way of presenting. Listen, stop worrying about what they did to you. I need to tell you right now, your deepest hurt's gonna come from those closest to you. Sometimes you can roll over and find your deepest pains. But can I tell you something? God has a way of turning things around. And just because that's what they did, don't mean it's gonna hurt you the way. You ain't gonna always hurt like this. It won't always be like this. That's why I like that song. The Lord will perfect that concerning me. This is what Joseph found out. And sooner or later, it's gonna turn in my favor. You know what I found out? That it's turning around for me. It won't always be like this. The Lord will perfect that concerning me. Sooner or later, it's gonna turn in my favor. It's my favorite part, y'all. Just said, it's turning around for me. Around for me, around for me. It's turning around for me. If you're watching us online, I want you to understand. Do not let what they did to you paralyze you. Just because that's what they did don't mean that's what you got to be. You needed that hurt. You needed that. Because without it, you wouldn't know them. You wouldn't know you, and more importantly, you wouldn't know God. You needed that. And now, you can walk around and saying crazy stuff like, I'm stronger, I'm wiser, I'm better, so much better. When I look back over all you brought me through, I can see that you were the one I held on to, 'cause I never would have made it. Never would have made it without you. Listen, that's your testimony. It ain't that you ain't been through, but you made it because he brought you through. That's how you made it. Stop worrying about getting even. Stop worrying about that. Because can't nobody do it better than God. But that's why you made it. That's why you are where you are. That's why you are where you are. God will elevate you above everything that tried to destroy you. Woo! I said, God will elevate you over everything that tried to destroy you. Don't worry about it. Let them move on. They're going to have to watch you be great without them. They're going to have to watch you be better without them. And when you see them again, don't you tell them nothing, but tell them this: can't nobody do me like Jesus. You ain't got to flex. You ain't got to go off on nobody. You ain't got to say, nah, 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 nah. Just say, can't nobody but God. He healed me when I didn't think I could be healed. He developed me when I thought I couldn't get past what hurt me. When my heart was broken, he kept me. Won't God rock you to sleep at night? Won't God keep you? I'm sorry I took up so much of your time, but I had to minister to you. If you're watching us online, if you're here today, I want you to know ain't no heartbreak bigger than our God. You can get through this. Now, as a matter of fact, you will get through this. And you're going to come out better than you ever were before.
Join us live for worship every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Bread House Fed, for sermons and more. And to support our ministry, Project Bethlehem, or anything Bread House, donate on Givelify. Search Bethlehem Baptist Church and look for our logo. Then you'll be set up to give on the go. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.